Hello Year 10, this is Mr. Thornton. Today we are looking at quackery and how new methods of treatment begin to circulate during something called the early modern period. So, the previous few lessons we have been looking at the Renaissance and the improvements that makes. Specifically, we have been looking at Harvey and how he uses circulation of the body to disprove Galen. Then we've looked at the improvements that people like Vesalius, Parry and Hunter used in the advancement of surgery. But today we're moving on and we're going to be looking at how people not only help medicine advance, but also how they prevent it advancing. So by the end of today, you'll understand what quackery was, and then also what the new treatments what new methods of treatments were developing during this early modern period. Before we do anything though, guys, please can you do the retrieval quiz, which has been marked retrieval quiz on quackery and new medicine methods of treatment. Once you've done that, guys, only 5 questions, come back to the PowerPoint. So, in order to understand what we are looking at today, we need to understand what we mean when we say quackery. All quackery is knowingly selling medicine that people knew wouldn't work. So, maybe it could be selling an ointment which was made of little more than alcohol and maybe some herbs to make it smell nice, which people could claim would cure everything from a headache all the way up to really serious illnesses like cancer. The problem with these is that people knew that they wouldn't work when they sold them, and they were selling them to people who genuinely didn't have any other option than to take them. So when we're talking about quackery, it is this idea that people often tried to cure people or tried to take cures that would never work. So far this term we have been looking at ideas from Bronze Age, Antiquity, so ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Then we moved on to seeing how these were actually implemented in the Middle Ages and looking at Christianity. The last few lessons we've been looking at the Renaissance, but today we're starting to move into this period between the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution. This is also known as the early modern period. So if I'm talking about the early modern period, I am talking about this kind of in-between of where it's Renaissance, but also when it's kind of the Industrial Revolution. For the really young quacks, guys, you need to read pages 41 to 44, just where it says quackery. Once again, the scan of the textbook has been added for this lesson. You need to make notes on the 3 things listed underneath, but then you must answer the questions at the bottom of the page. They do require you to do some thinking, but there is nothing in there which you cannot do using the textbook. Despite these quackeries, guys, there were some really important discoveries during this period between the Renaissance and the early modern period. And they're based on the ideas of Hippocrates and the Renaissance. So around science, rationalism, that idea of not just thinking, oh yeah, everything will be fine. No, thinking about things properly and then observing the effects. You're going to see this as you go through on the next slide. Once again, please can you just read the new discoveries subchapter on page 42. Then you need to make the notes on the 5 key discoveries. But you don't need to rewrite it all. All you need to know is who was the doctor or who was the person who was making the discovery, and then how did they develop medicine. This just needs to be a sentence. You don't need to go into huge detail here, guys. Then you need to answer the question, how do these new discoveries compare to the discoveries of the Renaissance? Which do you think was more important? The ideas of Harvey, Parry and Vesalius versus the 5 new key discoveries which you're going to see today. Okay, key points you must know. Like last week, guys, if you do not know these key points, you are going to be in a bit of trouble. So, quacks. Quackery was just a scam. People paid for medicine that they had little effect on them. It will have had some effect on things like pain, because it was mainly done through things like alcohol and opium. So your people are going to feel a tiny bit better, but it's going to be temporary and it's not going to give them a cure. Medicines were often based not on science, and they were only about the quacks making a fortune. People believed them as they did not understand the true cause of disease. I say it every lesson, guys. The only time people actually understand what causes disease is in after 1861, when Louis Pasteur discovers the germ theory. But because people don't understand this, and because this hasn't happened yet, people are desperate. And because they don't know about what actually cures disease, they need to then go to these extreme types of measures. Quacks would demonstrate that despite the Renaissance, this idea of learning and these new innovations, medicine is not being advanced by everyone. There are still ways medicine is not progressing, and it's mainly down to the quacks. However, the new discoveries, as we move from the Renaissance period into the early modern period, people are still trying to make medical advancements through new treatments. And they're based on science, the same as Hippocrates. Despite Hippocrates being all the way back in ancient Greece, his idea of science and observation is key to understanding medicine today. They complement the earlier works of Vesalius, Parry and Harvey. They are not just about new ideas completely out of the blue. No, they are still based on the ideas Vesalius, Parry and Harvey put in place, bringing back observation, challenging old ideas, and making sure that people are getting better. And finally, we get great treatments for asthma, scurvy and mental health, just to name a few. Okay, please can you write down this question? Explain the significance of the period between Renaissance and the early modern period. You then need to bug the question. So, box the command word, underline key information, and once you have written this question, you go back and check that you have actually answered it. For this question, you need to talk about both sides, both how medicine progressed, but also how it didn't. So, you need to talk about so please can you write down one good piece of evidence for how it progressed, so the new discoveries, and then how it doesn't progress, so an example of quackery during the early modern period. On board you can see a model of one which I have done, which you can use to help base on your answers. The first point in red, guys, we always need that peel paragraph structure. So in red we've got point. One way that the period between the Renaissance and early modern period was significant was because in some ways it prevented the advancement of medicine. I am using the question stem again, and you need to do that. I know we go on about it every lesson, but it is so important. If you are not using that question stem, it is not going to be as an effective paragraph as it could be. But then we're historians, we need to make sure we are using good quality evidence. So in blue, during the 17th and 18th century, quackery developed where people deliberately started to sell medicine they knew would not work, such as the Daffy elixir in 1647. I am using an example of quackery, but I'm also making sure I get in that date. Remember, you are historians. Dates are key. But you then need to explain. This is significant because it meant that many people during this time period were receiving fake medicine that would actually make them worse. In addition, it also prevented real medicine, which could have helped cure people from reaching them, as they were believing in fake remedies. So I'm saying the problem it has twofold. I'm saying it could make people worse, but also it prevents people getting that good quality medicine, which is so important. And that is answering the question. I'm saying why this period is bad. But then I still need to link. So thus, the time period is significant as quacks help to prevent the advancement of medicine. Use that question again. It doesn't need to be long, the link. But you need to make sure it is important.